When my father asked me to sit with him that quiet afternoon, I smiled instead of crying. I didn't know then that these would be our last moments alone together, the ones that would shape the way I remembered him forever. I had imagined his final days differently, filled with long hospital stays, conversations that prepared us for goodbye, moments I could hold on to. But life doesn't give warnings in neat packages. It comes quietly, sometimes suddenly, and leaves memories heavier than I ever imagined. He reached for my hand with that familiar grip, steady, strong, yet somehow fragile now. I had always recognized those hands, hands that had worked tirelessly, that had lifted me when I fell, that had held me as a child in ways that felt safe and unwavering. I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had scolded me, praised me, and sometimes frightened me with their sternness. Today, those eyes carried something I had never seen before, a weight, a hesitation, a truth waiting to escape. "There's something I need to tell you," he said softly, his voice shaking, not from weakness, but from the burden he had carried for decades. I felt my stomach twist, and yet I smiled, instinctively, because smiling had always been my way of comforting people, even when I was terrified. But inside, my heart was already racing. I nodded, silently urging him to continue. Deep down, I felt that life had just shifted in a way I could not undo. I wanted to reassure him, to say, "It's okay, everything will be fine." But the truth was, I had no idea what was about to come. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where neighbors know your family, your birthdays, even the little secrets you think you have hidden. My father was a man of quiet strength. He worked tirelessly, rarely complained, and expected respect more than affection. My mother, soft-spoken and careful with her words, balanced him perfectly. From them I learned about life, responsibility, hard work, patience, and the quiet, complicated ways love could protect, yet also hurt. I have a younger sister, Layla. We were close, though we fought often, as siblings do. Our family dinners were simple. My father at the head of the table, reading the newspaper. My mother serving food with a gentle smile. Layla and I exchanging stories from our day. The conversation was calm, steady, predictable, a rhythm that made our home feel safe. Little did I know then how precious those ordinary evenings were, and how the smallest details would later become anchors for my memories. As I grew older, I married Samir. He was patient, caring, and truly loved me. But my father had reservations. It wasn't that he disliked Samir, but he worried about life's practicalities. Money, careers, children, and responsibilities. My mother quietly hoped for our happiness and rarely intervened. I gave birth to 2 children, Sarah and Amir. I remember the look in my father's eyes when he held them for the first time. A mixture of pride, tenderness, and something I couldn't quite define. He taught Amir to ride a bike, whispered silly jokes to make Sarah laugh, and in those small moments, I could see the depth of his love. Yet even amidst these moments of warmth, tensions existed, subtle and persistent. My father sometimes seemed distant, answering questions vaguely, or avoiding certain topics. My mother would smile and tell me, "Some things are better left unspoken." I accepted this advice at the time. Life had enough complications already, I thought. But now I understand, the things left unspoken were shaping everything. Those silences were a foundation of secrets that would eventually surface. As the years passed, I noticed cracks forming, small at first, almost imperceptible. Misunderstandings, moments of tension that never erupted into arguments, quiet signs that something remained hidden. My father's health began to decline slowly. A cough here, fatigue there, a doctor's gentle warning to take it easy. I visited him often, bringing meals, sitting with him, trying to help. But there was always a distance, a preoccupation he could not share. One afternoon, while helping him with paperwork, he paused, staring at me with intensity. "Do you ever wonder about choices?" he asked. about the things we leave unsaid. I hesitated. Sometimes, I admitted. But why now? Because I won't have much time left, he said softly. A chill went through me. Every moment after felt like walking on the edge of a revelation I wasn't ready to understand. Misplaced words caused small arguments. One evening, I suggested a minor change in his medication schedule, something the doctor had approved. He looked hurt. "Do you think I'm incapable?" he asked. I stammered, "No, Father, I just thought." He shook his head and walked away. That night, I cried silently, not from anger, but from helplessness. I realized how little I truly understood him, how little time I had to hear him, to truly know him before it was too late. Months passed. Each visit carried the weight of anticipation, the knowledge that something monumental would be revealed soon. Then, one evening, as I was clearing the living room, he called me over. "Sit with me, please," he said. My heart sank. I knew something was coming, something I had been waiting for without realizing it. We sat together in the fading afternoon light, the room quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock. He looked at me, and I could see the truth in his eyes. He had carried a burden all these years, and now it was time to share it. "Before I go," he began, voice trembling, "there is something you must know, something I should have told you long ago. I've kept it hidden, because I thought it would protect you. But I see now that it may have caused more pain than I realized." I held my breath. The words sank slowly, each one heavier than the last. I wanted to ask questions, to interrupt, to understand immediately, but I could only sit and listen. This moment felt sacred, fragile, the culmination of years of silence, love, and unspoken truth. He continued, "Your mother and I, we made decisions that shaped your life in ways you might not understand. Choices we thought were right at the time. Decisions we made for the family. Decisions that affected everything, including how you grew up and the path your life has taken." I felt the room close in around me. I couldn't speak. My mind raced, trying to piece together decades of memory. Ordinary family dinners, quiet evenings, arguments over trivial things, and suddenly, everything felt different. "I am sorry," he said softly. "For the silence, for the secrecy, for the mistakes. I wanted to protect you. But I realize now that in doing so, I may have caused hurt. I hope you can forgive me one day." Tears flowed freely down my face. The father I had always known, strong, stoic, protective, was now vulnerable, confessing burdens I never imagined existed. I held his hand, trembling, feeling the weight of his confession, the depth of his love, and the fragility of time. For hours we spoke quietly, slowly, letting the silence carry some of the truth. Each word he shared added pieces to a puzzle I didn't even know I was trying to solve. And as the afternoon faded into evening, I realized that life had shifted, irreversibly, profoundly. The man who had always been my father, a figure of quiet strength, had now entrusted me with a truth that would change how I saw him, my family, and myself. After that afternoon with my father, everything in our home felt slightly different. The quietness was heavier, yet somehow full of meaning. I tried to go about my routine, cooking, helping my children with homework, checking in with my mother and sister, but every step felt altered. Even the familiar rooms seemed to hold the echo of what had been shared. A secret now quietly resting in the corners of our home. I noticed subtle changes in my father. He seemed slower, not just because of age or illness, but weighed down by something I could not see. He would pause mid-sentence, stare at the walls, or shake his head as if trying to remember details that had faded. Sometimes, I would ask if he was tired, and he would smile faintly, reassuring me. But I could see the strain in his hands, in the way his shoulders slumped, in the soft sighs that slipped past his lips when he thought I wasn't watching. At dinner that evening, the air was thick with unspoken tension. My mother quietly placed plates on the table, humming softly as she always did. My sister, Lila, attempted conversation about her day, but it fell flat. I realized we were all aware on some level that something had shifted. None of us knew exactly what to say. My father picked up his fork, paused, and then set it down again. Finally, he spoke. "I've been thinking a lot today," he said quietly, "about the choices we make, and the people we sometimes leave in the dark without realizing it." I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. My mother looked up at him, eyebrows slightly raised, a gentle concern in her eyes. She said nothing, just waited. Lila glanced at me, silent but wide-eyed, sensing the tension. "I want to make sure," he continued, "that I leave things right as I can." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Father," I began, but the words didn't come. My heart thumped loudly in my chest. I wanted to reassure him, to say it was okay, but I was terrified of what might follow. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more small tensions, the kind that quietly gnawed at the edges of family life. My father's health worsened, and we tried to take care of him gently. Sometimes a simple misunderstanding would become emotionally heavy. For instance, one afternoon, I tried to help him organize some old documents. He frowned. "Do you think I can't handle these myself?" he asked. "I'm only trying to help, Father," I replied softly. He shook his head, a brief flash of frustration crossing his face. "It's not about help," he said. "It's about being left out of my own decisions." I paused, not sure how to respond. It was just paperwork. Simple letters, bills, old photos. But in his eyes, it wasn't about the papers at all. It was about control, respect, and dignity. That moment lingered with me. I realized that much of the tension I had dismissed over the years, the sharp words, the silences, the moments of withdrawal, had not been about me at all, but about something deeper, something rooted in unspoken truths and choices I was yet to understand. At night, I would lie awake, thinking about his words, about the ways he had held back, protected, and guided us silently. I wondered how many things he had never said, how many moments of his life had been hidden beneath careful smiles and quiet gestures. I felt a mix of curiosity, frustration, and a deep, aching love. There were other signs, too. My sister began asking subtle questions about our family history, about decisions our parents had made long ago. I could see she was sensing the tension, the quiet weight of something unresolved. One evening, she turned to me while we were cleaning the kitchen. "Do you think Father regrets something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head, uncertain. "I don't know, Layla. I think he's carrying something he hasn't shared with anyone." She nodded, her eyes wide. "I can feel it too. It's like a shadow over the house." Indeed, it felt like a shadow. Even the sunlight, streaming through the windows, seemed subdued, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Conversations were cautious. Laughter came, but it was light, tentative. It was as if we were all walking carefully around an invisible truth we were afraid to disturb. One afternoon, I found myself in my father's study, helping him organize old photographs. There were images I had never seen before. His younger self, my mother, and a man I did not recognize. He watched me closely as I held each photo. "Do you know who this is?" he asked gently, pointing to the stranger. I shook my head. "That was a friend, or maybe more than a friend. Someone important, from before your time," he said softly. He paused, taking a deep breath. "I thought it best to protect you from knowing too much." I nodded slowly, a quiet understanding beginning to form. "Father, you've always protected us, but maybe some things need to be shared." He smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and regret. "Yes, some things should have been shared long ago." As days turned into weeks, these small revelations continued to accumulate, each adding to the quiet tension in our home. I began to notice subtle patterns. The way he avoided certain rooms, the way he paused when certain names were mentioned, the way he lingered on some memories but pushed others away. It became clear to me that the man I thought I fully knew was carrying a lifetime of secrets, carefully stored, weighed, and hidden. And yet, amidst this tension, there were moments of connection. Sometimes, late at night, we would sit together on the porch, watching the stars. He would speak softly, telling stories of his youth, sharing lessons learned from hardship, love, and loss. These moments were precious, a gentle counterbalance to the growing weight of his unspoken truths. It was during these evenings that I began to understand something important. The tension, the misunderstandings, and the quiet moments of withdrawal were not signs of distance or indifference. They were the result of a deep love, a desire to protect, and a fear that certain truths, if revealed too soon, might hurt us in ways we were not ready to bear. Yet the longer I waited, the more urgent it felt. I could sense that the revelation we were all awaiting, the one that would finally explain the hidden patterns, the subtle silences, the moments of tension, was approaching. My father seemed aware of it too, and in his quiet way, he prepared us for what was to come. One evening, as I was leaving the study, he called me back. "Sit with me, please," he said. His voice was soft, deliberate, and heavy with emotion. I obeyed, sensing that this moment was important. We sat in silence for a while, just listening to the quiet hum of the house. Then he spoke again. "There are things I've kept hidden, things I thought would protect you. But I see now that they may have caused more confusion than protection. I want you to know the truth before it's too late." The weight of his words settled over me. My heart pounded. I knew, in that quiet, ordinary moment, that the turning point of our family story was near. The secrets, the silences, the tensions that had lingered for decades were about to be laid bare, and when they were, nothing would be quite the same again. A day of his confession arrived quietly, almost unassumingly, like any other. The sun was slipping through the curtains in soft, golden streams, dust motes floating lazily in the air. I remember sitting across from him at the old wooden table in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, feeling an unusual tension in the room. His eyes met mine, steady and deep, carrying a weight I had come to recognize over the past weeks, the weight of truth waiting to be spoken. "I need to tell you something important," he began, voice gentle but firm, "something I've carried for decades and never shared. I thought I was protecting you all, but I realize now that keeping it secret may have caused more pain than I ever imagined." I nodded, my chest tightening. I'm listening, Father," I said softly. He took a slow, deliberate breath, as if drawing courage from the quiet air around him. "It's about your mother and me, and about the choices we made before you and Layla were born. Choices that shaped everything. Your lives, our family, even the person I became." My heart pounded. I had expected revelations before, hints of something hidden, whispers of regrets, but this felt monumental. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He looked down, fidgeting with his hands, and then back at me. "Years ago, before you were born, I made a decision I believed would protect the family, protect your mother, and ultimately protect you. But I made a mistake I never fully admitted to anyone, and I carried it with me silently for decades." The words hit me like a cold wave. My mind raced. I could feel the years of subtle tension, the silences, the misunderstandings, all clicking into place. Everything I had sensed but couldn't explain suddenly had a reason. My father's distant eyes, his occasional irritability, his careful avoidance of certain stories, it all made sense now. "I need to know," I whispered. "Father, please, tell me everything." He closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly. "I did what I thought was best, but in doing so, I changed lives in ways I could not see then. I thought I was protecting the family from harm, from pain. But in reality, I caused confusion and hurt, even for you." Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to reach across the table and take his hands in mine, to reassure him that it would be okay, that I understood even before knowing the full truth. But I was afraid of the revelation, afraid of the impact it might have, and afraid of seeing my father, the man I had always known as unwavering, vulnerable, and broken. I don't understand," I said, voice trembling. "How could one choice, one mistake, have affected all of us?" He nodded slowly. "It's complicated. Your mother and I, we made a decision regarding a situation from my younger years, something I thought I had controlled. I believed it was the right choice for everyone involved. But I didn't consider all the consequences, especially the ones that would touch you, Layla, and the children. I thought I could fix it later, or that you would never know, but that was wrong. The room was silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of the refrigerator. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Every memory of my father, every moment of tension or quiet withdrawal over the years, seemed to reframe itself in light of his words. The little arguments, the silences, the subtle anxieties, they were pieces of a puzzle I had never known existed. "Father, what exactly happened?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. He took my hand gently, holding it as if the physical connection could help him share what words alone could not. "There was someone in my life before your mother and I married, someone I cared for deeply, and yet circumstances forced me to make a choice. I chose what I thought was right for your mother and for the family, but I left truths unspoken, decisions unshared, and in doing so, I altered the course of our lives without realizing it at the time. I felt my chest tighten. My mind was spinning with questions, with realizations, with the silent acknowledgement of years spent guessing, wondering, and sometimes fearing the unknown. Are you saying that everything we've lived through was influenced by this?" I asked softly, barely daring to voice it. He nodded. "Yes, and I regret not telling you sooner. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that my silence caused more confusion, more pain, more misunderstanding than I could have imagined. And I'm sorry, deeply sorry." Tears fell freely. I wanted to speak, to interrupt, to demand details, to ask questions that my mind could not stop racing with, but the words lodged themselves in my throat. This was more than a confession. It was a lifetime of regret, carefully wrapped in decades of silence, now finally laid bare. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, voice quivering. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just listen, and know that I love you. Always have, always will. My intentions were never to harm, only to protect. But I see now that love is not always enough if it is accompanied by secrecy." For hours we spoke quietly, the conversation flowing slowly, carefully. He recounted details of the past, of choices made in fear, in hope, in love. He spoke of people I had never met, of promises he had kept silently, of moments he had witnessed but never shared. Every revelation carried weight, shifting my understanding of him, of my mother, of our family. By the time evening descended, painting the kitchen in shades of amber and shadow, I realized something profound. The man I had always admired for his strength, his stoicism, and his unwavering presence was deeply human, flawed, loving, fearful, and brave in his own quiet way. He looked at me, eyes glistening with tears he refused to wipe away. "I wanted to tell you everything before it was too late," he said. "Because you deserve to know. You deserve the truth, even if it hurts. And I want you to understand. I did what I thought was right." I nodded, holding his hand tighter. "Father, I understand. I don't hate you. And I love you too." The relief in his expression was subtle but unmistakable. A small weight seemed to lift from his shoulders, though the years of carrying this secret would not vanish overnight. And as I sat there, I felt a strange mixture of grief, love, and understanding wash over me. That evening, as we watched the sun dip below the horizon, I knew life would never be the same. The turning point had arrived. The hidden truths, the silences, the choices that had shaped our family for decades were finally in the open. And though the revelations were painful, they carried with them a sense of liberation, a chance to understand, forgive, and move forward with clarity and compassion. In that moment, I realized something essential about life and love. Sometimes, the hardest truths are the ones that teach us the most. And sometimes, those truths, even when painful, are a gift. A chance to see the people we love in their full humanity, to understand their mistakes and to forgive them, not because we must, but because we can. The days after my father's confession were quiet, yet heavy with emotion. The house, once full of routine and predictable rhythms, felt different. Even the familiar sounds of dishes clinking, Sarah and Amir's laughter, or the faint hum of the refrigerator carried a new weight. Everything we did seemed to echo the truth that had finally come to light. The secret he had held for decades now floated openly among us, transforming the ordinary into something fragile, emotional, and significant. At first, I didn't know how to act around him. I wanted to treat him as before, with casual conversations and light laughter, but it felt impossible. The man who had shared his truth, who had revealed his deepest regrets, seemed both closer to me and yet further away, fragile in a way I had never seen. I wanted to comfort him, but I also wanted to absorb everything he had shared, to understand the weight he had carried silently for so long. My mother seemed to feel the shift as well. She watched him with quiet concern, touching his hand lightly when she passed by, offering small smiles that tried to reassure him, or perhaps herself. Layla and I spoke more openly in hushed tones, carefully sharing our feelings about the revelation, trying to process the layers of emotion it had brought to the surface. I never realized how much he carried alone. Layla said one afternoon, her voice low and tentative, "I mean, all these years, and he never said a word." I nodded, tears brimming in my eyes. "I know, and now, we have to figure out how to carry it together, how to live with this truth." The children, too young to grasp the full meaning, sensed the subtle tension. Anir asked questions about why grandfather seemed quieter, why our family dinners now had a different feeling. Sarah, more observant in her quiet way, would sometimes pause mid-sentence and glance at him, as if sensing the gravity we adults carried silently. I tried to reassure them without diminishing the truth. "Grandfather loves us," I told them gently. "He's always loved us. Some things adults deal with are complicated, but they don't change the love we share." We began to integrate the truth slowly, cautiously. My father, once reserved, now allowed small windows into his feelings. He shared stories from his youth, lessons learned, regrets, moments of joy and sorrow, and we listened, soaking in every word. Some of his revelations were difficult, challenging our understanding of past events. Others were surprisingly tender, moments that deepened our appreciation for him and for the life he had tried to protect us from experiencing unnecessarily. One afternoon, as I helped him sort through old letters, he paused and looked at me with that familiar, steady gaze. "Do you understand why I made those choices?" he asked softly. I nodded, swallowing hard. "I do now, Father. I understand. It doesn't make it easy, but I understand." He smiled faintly. "That's all I've ever wanted, for you to understand. To know that my silence was never about you, never about hiding from you, but about trying to do what I thought was right." It was a difficult process. Forgiveness did not come instantly, not for me, not for Layla, not even for my mother. The weight of decades could not simply vanish in a few conversations, but slowly, quietly, it began to lift. We spoke more honestly, shared memories that had been clouded by assumptions, and acknowledged the subtle ways the past had shaped us. We also reached out to extended family. Some conversations were awkward, filled with pauses and careful wording. Others brought unexpected relief. Sharing the truth allowed us to untangle misunderstandings that had persisted for years. We discovered that many of the quiet tensions we had sensed in our family dinners, in casual remarks and in old photographs, were connected to the choices and secrets that had been held too long. One evening, as my father rested in his favorite chair, I brought Sarah and Amir to sit with him. He held their small hands in his, teaching them a game he had invented in his youth. "Grandfather was always clever," I whispered to them, smiling softly. "Even when he kept secrets, he always wanted to protect us." Sarah looked up at him, eyes wide, and said, "Grandfather, I love you." He chuckled softly, a sound I had rarely heard outside of our most private moments. "And I love you too, my dear." Watching them together, I realized that the truth he had revealed as painful as it was, had brought us closer. It had allowed us to see him, not just as a parent or a grandparent, but as a human being, flawed and loving, capable of mistakes and immense care, all at once. We began new routines, small rituals to honor the truth and the life we shared. Evening walks became opportunities to talk openly, share memories, and reflect on lessons learned. Family dinners included discussions of stories we had never dared to tell before, about choices, regrets, and triumphs. The atmosphere remained calm, never dramatic, but every moment carried a subtle emotional depth. It was not always easy. Some days, the weight of what we had learned pressed heavily. I found myself reflecting late at night on moments I had misunderstood, on arguments that seemed trivial at the time, but now had meaning. Yet each time, I returned to the thought that understanding and compassion were more powerful than regret. Holding on to the past with anger or frustration served no one. My father, in his final months, seemed lighter. He laughed more often, shared stories without hesitation, and occasionally, I caught glimpses of the man he had been before responsibilities and choices had carved lines of worry into his face. There were still moments of silence, pauses where he seemed lost in memory, but they no longer carried the same heaviness. Those silences were reflections, not burdens. I also noticed changes in myself. I began to approach life differently, with more patience, empathy, and attention to detail in relationships. I listened more, judged less, and tried to recognize the unspoken emotions in those around me. It was as if my father's revelation had not only transformed our family, but had reshaped how I saw the world, how I approached love, responsibility, and forgiveness. One rainy afternoon, as I sat with him by the window, watching droplets race down the glass, he spoke quietly. "Do you ever regret anything, my child?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Father. I regret nothing. Not the silence, not the tension, not the years of confusion. They brought us here, together, understanding each other in ways we never could have imagined." He smiled, eyes glistening. "I'm glad to hear that. That is all I ever wanted." In the days that followed, our family found a new rhythm. The weight of the past remained, but it no longer suffocated us. We moved forward with compassion, patience, and the quiet understanding that life is a series of choices, mistakes, and lessons, and that love, even flawed and complicated, can endure. We began to talk about the future, about memories we would create together, and about the importance of honesty and openness. The home that had once been quiet, weighed with unspoken truths, now felt alive with intention, connection, and emotional clarity. We laughed, we reminisced, and we shared small moments of tenderness that became anchors in our daily lives. It was in this phase, this resolution, that I understood the full depth of his love. The confession, painful as it had been, did not diminish him. Instead, it humanized him, showing us that strength lies not in perfection, but in the courage to admit mistakes, to seek forgiveness, and to love openly despite our flaws. Even as his health continued to decline, there was peace. We were prepared for the eventual farewell, carrying with us a shared understanding that made grief bearable, love stronger, and memory richer. The resolution was not a sudden fix, but a slow, steady transformation. A gentle healing that touched every part of our family's life. Years have passed since that quiet afternoon when my father shared the truth that had been hidden for decades. I still remember every word, every pause, every hesitation. That day changed me, changed our family, and shaped the way I view love, life, and forgiveness. Even now, I can feel the weight of his confession in a way that is both comforting and sobering, a reminder of the fragility of life, the power of honesty, and the importance of understanding those we love. After he passed, the house felt emptier, quieter, yet alive with memory. Every room carried echoes of him. The kitchen where we shared countless meals, the study where he told stories, the garden where he taught Amir to ride his first bike. These ordinary spaces became sacred in their silence, repositories of love, lessons, and the truths he had finally entrusted to us. In the weeks after his passing, Layla and I spent hours together, talking quietly, remembering our father, reflecting on the choices that had shaped our lives. We laughed softly at childhood memories, cried together at moments of realization, and slowly began to understand the depth of his love and the courage it had taken to finally speak the truth. My mother, too, carried both sorrow and peace. She often spoke of how much she had admired his strength, his quiet devotion, and the way he had always sought to protect us, even through mistakes. "He was human, dear," she said one afternoon, holding my hand. "He loved fiercely, even when he was flawed. That's what matters most." The children grew up hearing stories of their grandfather, not just the happy, easy moments, but also the lessons learned through regret, honesty, and perseverance. They learned that life is not perfect, that people make mistakes, and that the courage to admit those mistakes is what defines true strength. Watching them absorb these lessons, I realized that my father's legacy would continue in ways I could never have anticipated. As for me, I felt a transformation within myself. I began to approach relationships with more patience, more empathy, and a deeper understanding. I listened more carefully, noticed emotions previously ignored, and tried to act with kindness in moments of potential conflict. The revelation of my father's truth was painful, yes, but it also opened a door to a life lived with honesty, compassion, and conscious connection. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself sitting quietly in the chair where he first spoke his truth, watching the house settle into calm silence. I reflect on the journey we took, the tension, the misunderstandings, the heartbreak, and finally, the healing. I think about how easily life could have slipped away without that conversation, how much we would have missed had the truth remained hidden. And I understand something profound. Love is not perfect. Families are not perfect. People are not perfect. But love endures. Forgiveness is possible. And understanding, even when delayed, has the power to heal wounds that seemed insurmountable. I remember a moment, months after his passing, when I shared a quiet afternoon with Layla and the children in the garden. The sun was gentle, the air warm, and the leaves rustled softly in the breeze. Amir ran to me, laughing, holding a small flower he had picked. Sarah, noticing a bird perched nearby, pointed and whispered its name. I watched them and felt a sense of peace. Life moved forward, fragile and unpredictable, yet beautiful in its continuity. That day, I spoke aloud, softly, almost to myself. "Grandfather, I understand now. I forgive. I carry your love, your lessons, and your truth with me." The wind seemed to respond with a gentle rustle through the trees, and I felt him there, not as a shadow of regret, but as a presence of enduring guidance and love. "Pete, I have learned that secrets, while sometimes protective, can also weigh heavily. The courage to speak, even when it hurts, has the power to transform lives. My father's final confession was painful, yes, but it brought clarity, healing, and a deeper connection than I could have imagined. It reminded me that relationships thrive not on perfection, but on honesty, understanding, and compassion. Even now, I carry moments of reflection, the quiet memories that anchor me. I think of his voice, soft but unwavering, telling me that his intentions were always to protect, to guide, to love. I remember his eyes, steady and deep, showing both vulnerability and strength. And I realize that life's most valuable lessons often come from the hardest truths. Lessons that shape who we are and how we move forward in love. There are days when grief resurfaces, moments when the absence of his presence is palpable. But those moments are balanced by gratitude. Gratitude for the time we shared, for the honesty he entrusted to me, and for the love that endured beyond mistakes and regrets. I have learned to sit with these feelings, to honor them, and to allow them to deepen my connections with others. Life continues, as it always does. My children grow, my sister and I share laughter and quiet moments of understanding, and my mother carries the warmth of memories into each day. And in all these moments, I see the reflection of my father's love, the way it guided, protected, and shaped us. A truth he shared, painful as it was, became the foundation for a life lived with greater empathy, awareness, and compassion. I sometimes imagine speaking to him now, if only in thought. Father, thank you. For your love, for your honesty, for your courage. I understand you now, more fully than I ever did before. I forgive, and I carry you with me. And in that imagined conversation, I feel peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of understanding. Not the removal of mistakes, but the recognition that love, honesty, and forgiveness can transform them into something meaningful. The hardest truths often teach us the most. They test our patience, our capacity to forgive, and our ability to love deeply. And yet, when we embrace them, they open the heart to empathy, connection, and hope. Before he died, my father shared a truth that broke my heart. But through that pain, I discovered clarity, compassion, and a sense of peace that endures. And now, as I look at my own family, I carry him with me, not in regret, not in anger, but in love. In every choice, every quiet conversation, every moment of understanding, I feel the echo of his wisdom. Life is fragile. Love is fragile. And yet both endure when we approach them with honesty, empathy, and courage. That is the lesson I carry forward, the legacy he left behind, and the quiet truth that shapes every day I live.